I always knew something was off the moment my husband started putting cologne on to go grocery shopping. The scent would linger long after he claimed to have forgotten the eggs or couldn't find the right brand of pasta sauce. I didn't want to believe it at first. No one wants to believe that the person they built a life with could betray them so effortlessly. But denial has a way of rotting from the inside out, and soon, the gut feelings turned into clues too loud to ignore. It started small, late-night texts, the sudden password on his phone, and a distance in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I watched him disappear from me piece by piece, like sand slipping through clenched fists. The lies came sugar-coated, delivered with a smile that once made me feel safe. And every time he whispered, "You're overthinking," I felt like I was losing my mind. But I wasn't crazy. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let him make me feel like I was. I spent weeks gathering proof. Quietly. Smartly. A screenshot here, a deleted photo recovered there. I never confronted him. Not yet. I wanted something more. Not revenge. No, what I wanted was truth, raw and undeniable, served ice cold at the perfect moment. One day, I overheard a phone call he thought I wouldn't catch. It was muffled, but I caught enough, her name, a date, and a restaurant. He was planning a romantic dinner with her. He even had the nerve to book a table at our favorite spot, the one with the little candles and handwritten menus, where we celebrated our anniversary just months before. That was the final straw.
I didn't cry.
I didn't scream. I planned. I looked her up, this woman who thought it was fine to play house with my husband while wearing someone else's ring. Her social media told me everything I needed, her favorite cafes, her pet cat's name, and most importantly, her husband. Yes, she was married. A pretty little double life wrapped in lipstick and deceit. His name was Daniel, and he looked just as heartbroken in his photos as I felt every time my husband turned away from me in bed. I found Daniel's business email, reached out with nothing but a subject line. "You deserve to know." He responded in less than 20 minutes. We met for coffee 2 days later, and I saw the pain on his face before he even sat down. "She told me I was paranoid," he said quietly, stirring his untouched cappuccino. "Same," I whispered. And that was enough. We didn't need any more words to understand each other. We decided to go together. Not to cause a scene, no, we weren't after drama. We just wanted them to see the consequences of what they thought would stay hidden in shadows. The night of the dinner, I wore the same dress I wore on our last anniversary.
Red. Bold.
The kind of color that commands attention. Daniel wore a sleek black suit and carried himself with a calmness that only made the moment more chilling. We walked into the restaurant like ghosts returning to haunt a past that still ached. I had already called ahead. Reserved the table right next to theirs. I made sure it would be close enough that they couldn't ignore us, but not close enough to cause a scene. Just close enough to make them squirm. We were seated first. I sat facing the door, heart pounding, but my face smooth as glass. Then I saw them. She walked in laughing, touching his arm like she had every right to. He looked happy, relaxed, like the man I once married, before the secrets turned him into someone I didn't recognize. And then his eyes met mine. He froze mid-step. The color drained from his face, and for a second, I thought he might actually collapse. His gaze flicked to Daniel, and then to me, and then back to Daniel again. She followed his eyes, and her smile faltered, then vanished completely. They didn't sit down right away. They just stood there, caught between two realities, what they were doing and who we were. The silence between us stretched long and tight, the kind that hums with the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. We didn't say a word. I turned to Daniel and clinked my glass against his. "To clarity," I said softly. He smiled. "To truth." They sat down eventually, 2 tables over.
Quiet.
Stiff. Their food came. They barely touched it. Ours came, too. And we ate. Slowly. Carefully. Like nothing had happened. But everything had. My husband never looked at me directly after that. He couldn't. And she, well, she looked like she was trying to vanish inside her wine glass. Good. Let her taste the bitterness. Later that night, my husband came home before I did. He was waiting on the couch, looking like a man who had finally seen the storm he created come crashing down. I can explain, he said. No, you can't, I replied. And even if you could, I'm not interested. He begged, apologized, swore it was a mistake, a phase, a stupid lapse in judgment. But the thing about betrayal is, it doesn't just hurt, it rewrites the whole history. Every kiss, every laugh, every I love you becomes suspect.
Poisoned. I didn't yell.
I didn't cry. I just packed my things and left. Daniel and I stayed in touch, not romantically, just two people who understood each other in a way no one else could. There was a strange comfort in knowing someone else had survived the same storm and walked away stronger. I started over. New place, new job, new peace. And every now and then, I go back to that restaurant. Not to relive the pain, but to remind myself what it looks like to choose dignity over destruction. Some betrayals break you. But some, they become the fire that forges a new, unshakable version of you. And to this day, I don't regret reserving that table. Not one bit. Her name is Elena, 34 years old. Former painter, now a school art teacher. She still keeps her easel in the corner of the guest room, half forgotten, like a part of herself she no longer has time for. Once, that easel held wild strokes of oil, paint, and passion. Now it holds dust. Marriage has a way of doing that, sometimes stretching you out thin, like canvas over too many frames. She married Nathan 7 years ago. The kind of man who wears crisp button-down shirts even on weekends and always smells faintly of cedarwood and ambition. A corporate strategist by profession, Nathan was the type who checked their monthly budget down to the decimal and triple-checked if the front door was locked. He was reliable, thoughtful in a mechanical kind of way. When they first met, Elena found his structure comforting. She was chaotic, passionate, led by instinct and emotion. He grounded her. But what once felt like balance had slowly become confinement. Elena always dreamed of a life full of color, of art galleries, spontaneous trips, and messy Sunday mornings. But life with Nathan had become alarmingly predictable. Same breakfast, same routine, same distracted kiss on the forehead before he left for work. They hadn't made love in months. At first, she blamed the stress, then the schedules. Eventually, she just stopped blaming anything at all and let the silence settle in. The truth was Elena was lonely. Not in a dramatic, weepy way. It was quieter than that. Loneliness that crept in while folding laundry. That sat beside her during dinner while Nathan scrolled through emails. That whispered at night when she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was it. If she had already lived the best parts of her life. But she stayed. Because love, she believed, wasn't always fire and fireworks. Sometimes it was just staying. Just choosing. Until the day came when she found a receipt for 2 glasses of wine at a bar she'd never heard of. A Tuesday night when Nathan had said he was working late. It didn't scream infidelity, but it nudged at her. She didn't say anything then. She simply observed. Noticed the way he started coming home later. The new cologne. The sudden interest in the gym. The phone that never left his side. It was like watching him slowly transform into someone she didn't know, like she was losing him in inches and couldn't catch up. And then one night, she found the text. It was short, just a heart emoji, and last night was perfect red heart. No name, no context. But Elena knew. Deep in her bones, she knew. Nathan, for his part, never thought of himself as a bad man. He still doesn't. That's the most infuriating part. To him, the affair didn't start with lust. It started with attention. Her name was Cassandra. 30, polished, magnetic. She worked in his building on the 17th floor, marketing if he remembered right. She laughed at his jokes, complimented his tie, remembered how he took his coffee. She made him feel noticed.
Seen.
Something he hadn't realized he'd been missing until she handed him a coffee cup with his name written in loopy handwriting and winked. It was harmless at first. Quick lunches, shared elevators, a few texts that dipped just below the line of inappropriate. But then came the late meetings, the business trips, and suddenly, it wasn't harmless anymore. Nathan justified it by telling himself that Elena didn't care anymore, that they'd drifted, that she wouldn't even notice. He hated confrontation, preferred avoidance. So instead of ending his marriage or confessing, he just compartmentalized. Work Nathan, home Nathan, and Cassandra became a secret tucked into the in-between. Cassandra knew he was married.
She didn't care.
She had her own husband, Daniel, a quiet, thoughtful man who worked in nonprofit and packed her lunch every morning.
She used to love that about him.
But somewhere along the way, his gentleness bored her. She wanted excitement. Nathan gave her that. It wasn't love. At least not for Nathan. He never once imagined a future with Cassandra. But she filled a gap. Made him feel important again. Desired. It wasn't right, but it was convenient. And so, the two affairs grew like weeds behind carefully closed doors. Until Elena traced a lipstick stain on one of Nathan's undershirts. One that she didn't own. That night, she didn't cry.
She didn't yell.
She simply stood in the bathroom mirror, looking at herself for a long time. Her reflection stared back, a woman with tired eyes and quiet rage blooming behind them. Not the type of rage that explodes, but the kind that simmers. Controlled. Patient. Focused. She started digging. Late at night, while he slept beside her like nothing was wrong, she copied numbers, names, and locations from his phone. She searched Cassandra's name, scanned her Facebook, and that's when she found him, Daniel. There was a photo. Cassandra and Daniel at a charity event, smiling, his arm around her waist. The caption read, "My rock, my always." Elena stared at it for minutes. This man, whoever he was, didn't deserve this either. That's when the idea took root. Elena wasn't interested in revenge. Not in the dramatic sense. She didn't want to ruin lives or scream in restaurants or throw drinks. No, what she wanted was a mirror. A perfectly placed mirror so Nathan and Cassandra could see themselves for exactly who they had become. She wanted them to sit in their betrayal, not escape it with half-truths and gaslighting. She reached out to Daniel with measured words.
Calm. Direct.
She didn't want him to react impulsively. She wanted him to understand the truth. It was a gamble. He could have ignored her, blocked her, or denied it altogether. But he didn't. Daniel responded with a single line. "I've suspected something. When can we meet?" They sat across from each other at a quiet cafe near the harbor. Neither of them touched their coffee. Words came slow at first, cautious. Then faster. Then all at once. Elena told him everything she knew. Daniel listened, jaw tight, fingers trembling around his cup. But he didn't get angry. He got quiet, focused. "I want to see it," he said. "With my own eyes." So they planned. The dinner reservation was easy. She knew Cassandra's favorite place. She posted about it often enough. Elena called, reserved a table one spot away. She made sure the lighting would be bright. No shadows. No corner booth where secrets could hide. The days leading up to it passed slowly. At night, Elena lay beside Nathan, pretending to sleep, feeling the weight of a man who no longer belonged to her. Her stomach churned with nerves, but her resolve stayed sharp. She didn't fantasize about the confrontation. She rehearsed her calm, her stillness. Daniel, meanwhile, moved through his days like a man possessed. He didn't tell Cassandra he knew. He didn't confront her or snoop. He simply watched. Every kiss on the cheek. Every working late tonight. He memorized her lies like lines in a play. And when the evening arrived, he put on his best suit, tied his best knot, and walked into that restaurant beside a woman he barely knew, but who understood him more in a week than Cassandra had in months. As they entered, a quiet hum of jazz filtered through the speakers. Candles flickered on white-clothed tables. Everything was poised, elegant. Just like Cassandra liked it. Elena scanned the room, her heartbeat steady but loud. Daniel gave her a small nod as they sat. Their table was just to the left of where Cassandra and Nathan would sit. Enough to be seen. Enough to be undeniable. Minutes later, the door opened. There they were. And everything was about to unravel. Nathan froze in the doorway the moment his eyes locked on Elena. Her presence hit him like a glass of ice water to the face. Unexpected, jarring, and impossible to ignore. For a split second, he thought he was imagining her. She looked devastatingly composed. Hair perfectly in place. That red dress, his favorite, hugging her like she owned the room. But it wasn't the dress that made his heart stop. It was the man sitting beside her. Daniel. Nathan had never seen him in person, but the pieces clicked instantly. The suit, the stiff shoulders, the barely concealed fury behind the man's calm expression. His heart sank with the weight of realization. Beside him, Cassandra had gone pale. She let go of Nathan's hand mid-step, her eyes darting from Elena to Daniel to the table that had become a public confession booth. Her breath caught. She whispered something under her breath, maybe a curse, maybe a prayer. But Elena didn't flinch. She turned her head slightly, just enough to meet Nathan's eyes. No words. No outburst. Just a quiet gaze that cut deeper than any scream could. She clinked her wine glass softly against Daniel's. Nathan wanted to run. Say something. Do something. But all the practiced lies melted away. There was no script for this. No strategy. Just silence and guilt. They took their seats, visibly shaken. The romantic glow of the restaurant had vanished. Waiters glanced nervously at both tables, sensing a tension no one could name, but everyone could feel. The air had turned electric, humming with exposed truth. The fallout began before dessert could even be served. Nathan didn't touch his meal. He sat stiffly, his eyes flicking toward Elena every few seconds, waiting for her to crack. For her to cause a scene. But she didn't. She smiled at Daniel. Laughed at a joke he made about the wine. She looked liberated. And that terrified him more than anger ever could. Back at home, Elena packed her things without a single accusation. She moved like a woman who had already mourned the marriage, already buried the love. Nathan tried to stop her. I made a mistake, he said, voice barely above a whisper. We can fix this. I'll end it. I'll do whatever you need me to. She paused, looking at the man who once held her dreams in his hands. You already ended it, Nathan. I'm just accepting it. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but she pulled away gently. There's no fixing something you burned down with your own hands, she added. You don't love me. You love what I made easy for you. The media didn't pick it up, of course. It wasn't a scandal for headlines, no celebrity, no public office, no viral video. But the aftermath played out in quieter corners of their lives. Among mutual friends. Family. The kind of gossip that simmers behind wine glasses and coffee mugs. People chose sides as they always do. Some of Nathan's friends defended him, painting Cassandra as a temptress. Others turned cold. His mother was devastated, not just by what he'd done, but by how calmly Elena had walked away. She had class, she muttered once. You had chaos. At work, Nathan was never quite the same. He kept his head down. His boss called him in for a private conversation. Company reputation, HR whispers. Cassandra quit 2 weeks later, unable to endure the side glances, the judgment. She tried to make things work with Daniel, but Daniel had already moved out. He didn't shout. He didn't beg her to explain. He simply left a note. You killed the safest place I had in this world. I hope it was worth it.
Cassandra tried calling,
Messaging.
apologizing.
But Daniel never responded. He changed his number, took a sabbatical from work, spent time with his sister in Maine, where the nights were quiet and no one knew his name. There he wrote, journaled, reflected, and healed. Meanwhile, Elena found herself waking up to mornings without bitterness in her chest. She signed up for a weekend art retreat, bought fresh paints. Slowly, colors returned to her life. One Saturday, she sat in a park with a sketch pad in her lap and realized something strange. She was smiling for no reason. Not for someone else. Not for show. Just smiling. But the pain didn't vanish overnight. It came in waves. Like the day she ran into Nathan at the grocery store. He looked smaller somehow. Tired. There was no confrontation. Just a glance. An awkward nod. And then he turned away. Elena stood there for a moment, realizing she felt no anger. No love. Just a distant ache for the version of him who used to bring her sunflowers on Wednesdays for no reason. Healing, she learned, wasn't linear. It came through small moments, saying no without guilt, laughing without looking over her shoulder, painting something just for herself. One afternoon, she received a message from Daniel. Just a short one. I saw your latest painting online. It's beautiful. I hope you're doing well. She replied, I am. I hope you are too. They didn't meet up. Didn't rekindle anything. They didn't need to. They were two survivors of the same wreckage, now walking different but parallel paths toward peace. And in the end, what Elena learned was this. Some betrayals come like a thunderstorm, loud and wild, crashing down everything you know. Others are quiet,
subtle.
They bleed you slowly until you don't recognize your own reflection. But either way, when you truly rise, there's nothing more powerful than reclaiming your voice in a room where you were once silenced. She had reserved that table to expose the truth. But in doing so, she also reserved her freedom. The first morning after leaving Nathan, Elena woke up in a friend's spare room with sunlight streaking through half-closed blinds and the quiet hum of the city outside. It should have felt unfamiliar, jarring, but instead, it felt light. She lay still for a moment, listening to her own breath, marveling at the sudden absence of that gnawing pressure in her chest, the one that had lived there for months. For the first time in years, she wasn't checking her phone to see if he was lying. She wasn't searching for proof. There was no need. The truth had already been served, and now she was free. But freedom comes with emptiness, too. In those first few days, Elena drifted between numbness and a quiet fury. She tried to paint, but nothing came. She wandered the aisles of the grocery store without needing to buy for two. She cried over forgotten toothbrushes and songs that used to play in Nathan's car. Grief, she realized, wasn't just for the death of love. It was for the death of who she used to be.
Still, she didn't go back.
She didn't answer his calls. She didn't check his social media. Her silence was not an act of cruelty. It was an act of survival. Then came the moment that changed everything. A week after the dinner, she found herself in the art supply store down on Maple Street, just browsing, she told herself. Just looking. But as she stood before a wall of untouched canvases, something in her shifted. Her fingers brushed the textured surface of a 30 by 40 frame, and she whispered under her breath, I want to fill this. She didn't mean with colors, not exactly. She meant with truth, with memory, with herself. That night, Elena spread out her materials across the floor and began to paint. Not beautiful landscapes, not commissions or pretty abstracts. She painted emotion. Raw, messy, layered. Each brushstroke carried a part of her story. Betrayal, clarity, release. She worked until her fingers cramped and her knees ached, and by dawn, her first piece was done. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She took a picture and posted it on her long-forgotten Instagram art page. The caption read, I lost something I loved. Then I found something I forgot. I had myself. The response was small but heartfelt. Comments from old friends, strangers who related, messages saying her work felt like truth. And that was enough to keep going. In the weeks that followed, Elena's life quietly bloomed. She started a small online shop for her art prints, joined a collective for local women artists. She began teaching weekend painting workshops in a sunlit studio downtown. The same studio where she once took lessons in her 20s, back when she still believed love could conquer anything. Every canvas she filled was an act of defiance, not against Nathan, but against the silence she had let sit between them for too long. Meanwhile, Nathan unraveled in slow motion. At first, he tried to control the narrative. Told his friends it had been a rough patch, a misunderstanding. He told his mother that Elena was being dramatic, that she set him up. But the more he talked, the less they listened. His boss grew colder. The invitations dried up. Even Cassandra stopped returning his texts after Daniel left her. He stood in the middle of the wreckage, realizing for the first time that maybe he hadn't been the victim of a mistake. Maybe he had been the architect of it. Nathan spent long nights replaying the dinner in his head. The way Elena had looked through him instead of at him, how she had turned her pain into poise. He couldn't shake the image. It haunted him, not because she embarrassed him, but because she had shown him the version of herself he never deserved. One rainy night, he drove past the old apartment where she was staying with her friend. He didn't knock, just sat in the car staring at the lit window, unsure if he wanted to apologize or just feel close to something he once had. He began journaling, something he never did before, writing down things he never said aloud. I thought I could get away with it. I thought she'd never leave. I thought she needed me more than I needed her. The words shamed him, but they also cracked open something he hadn't faced in years, his own cowardice. He wasn't evil. He wasn't a monster. He was just small, and selfish, and afraid. But Elena had grown. 1 month after the dinner, she received an invitation to speak at a local women's event. The theme was reclamation. She almost declined, but then she thought of that table, the wine glass, the silence that spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. She remembered how powerful it felt to choose dignity. And she said yes. On the night of the event, she stood before a modest audience in a cozy community hall, holding a printed copy of one of her paintings. The piece was abstract, layered in reds, blacks, and golden streaks of light. This is what betrayal looks like, she told them. But also, this is what rebirth looks like. They live in the same painting, because one always makes way for the other. After the event, a young woman approached her with tears in her eyes. I'm in the middle of what you just described, she said. I thought I was crazy. I thought maybe I was too emotional. Elena smiled gently and took her hand. You're not crazy. You're awake. That moment became her new turning point. Her pain hadn't just transformed her, it had reached others. She wasn't just surviving now. She was creating, leading, healing. One evening, she received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a letter. Elena, I don't expect you to read this, let alone forgive me. But I need to say it. Not for closure. Not for peace. Just because the truth matters. Asterisk, asterisk. You didn't deserve what I did to you. You were always more than I saw. And that's on me, not you. I see now what I threw away. Not just a marriage, but a woman who loved with her whole heart. Asterisk, asterisk. I'm sorry I didn't protect that. I hope you keep painting. You were always meant to fill the world with color. Asterisk, asterisk. Nathan. She folded the letter and placed it inside a journal she kept by her bed. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed and let it be part of her past. She never wrote back. Her final act of closure wasn't silence. It was living. The following week, she opened her first small gallery exhibit. Her collection was called Asterisk, What Remains After Fire. Asterisk, each piece told a chapter. Each one marked a decision, a scar, a breakthrough. As she stood at the center of the room, surrounded by the art of her own becoming, someone asked her, "What made you brave enough to face it head-on?" Elena turned slowly, eyes calm. "I wasn't brave," she said. "I was just tired of shrinking." And with that, her story turned, not away from betrayal, but toward the blazing, unstoppable light of a woman who finally chose herself. The night of Elena's gallery opening arrived with quiet anticipation and a sky dusted with stars. The city buzzed outside, cars humming, laughter echoing from the sidewalks, but inside the gallery, everything felt still, elevated. The space was intimate but radiant, with warm golden lighting casting soft shadows across the clean white walls. Each painting stood boldly, arranged in chronological order like chapters of a silent memoir. Asterisk, What Remains After Fire. Asterisk. The name drew curious visitors, friends, strangers, even fellow artists who'd followed Elena's work online. Each canvas held not just color but emotion. Anger streaked across in crimson tones, sorrow layered deep in charcoals, but always a glimmer of gold somewhere in the chaos. The gold was intentional. A nod to kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with precious metals. Elena's belief that brokenness wasn't something to hide, it was something to honor. She walked among the guests answering questions, sipping white wine. But as the night deepened, something inside her stirred, an awareness, a shift in the air. She turned toward the entrance. Nathan was there. He stood just beyond the threshold, hesitant, dressed simply in a navy sweater and dark jeans. There was no bravado, no arrogance, just a man who finally understood what he'd lost. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The people, the music, the noise. It was just the two of them, facing the residue of what used to be a life together. Elena didn't move toward him. She didn't have to. He approached slowly, like someone entering a sacred space. "I wasn't sure I should come," he said softly, eyes darting to the nearest painting, a swirl of midnight blue with a single gold vein cracking through the center. "But I saw your post, and I needed to see what you've done, what you've become." Elena studied him. He looked older somehow. Not physically, but spiritually, like life had finally forced him to sit with himself. There was pain in his eyes, but also something else. Acceptance. "You never saw this part of me," she said gently, motioning toward the gallery. "Not really." Nathan nodded. "I think I was afraid to. I think you always shone too brightly for me, and instead of being proud of your light, I looked away. And then I started blaming you for the dark." A pause. A long, aching pause. "I read your letter," she said. His eyes flickered. "I meant every word." "I know," she replied. "But I didn't come here to relive us, Nathan. I came here to let you see that I survived, that I'm not your regret. I'm my own victory." That hit him hard. He lowered his gaze, then lifted it again, more grounded this time. "Are you happy?" he asked. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't hopeful. It was a real, vulnerable question. Elena didn't answer right away. She looked around the room, at the paintings, at the people admiring them, at the woman she now recognized in the mirror every morning. "Yes," she said. "Not all the time, not in some fairy tale way, but in a quiet, steady way. In the way that means I don't wait for someone else to make me whole." Nathan exhaled, almost like a prayer. "I'm glad," he said, voice cracking. "You deserve that. I hope you never doubt that again." And with that, he stepped back, gave her a final nod, and left. No pleas. No apologies that could undo what had been done. Just an honest, clean goodbye. The moment wasn't dramatic, it was sacred. Elena stood in the gallery center, letting the weight of it settle in her bones. Not sadness. Not regret. Just closure. the final brushstroke on a painting long in the making. As the night wore on, she found herself beside a painting titled Asterisk, the Table. Asterisk, it was a visual retelling of the night she and Daniel exposed the affair. 2 tables, 2 figures in shadow, 2 others awash in light. She hadn't seen Daniel in person since then. But as fate would have it, he arrived. He walked in near closing, his hair longer, a bit of scruff on his jaw. He looked healthy, whole. He held a single sunflower in his hand, a quiet nod to a story she thought no one else had remembered. "I heard about the exhibit," he said, offering the flower. "Thought it was time I finally saw the full story." Elena took it, her fingers brushing his. "It's good to see you." They walked together in silence, weaving through the stories she'd painted. He stopped at the table, eyes scanning the details. "That night," he said slowly, "I thought it would break me.
But now,
I think it was the night that gave me my life back." Elena nodded. "Same." They stood like that for a long moment. No expectations. No promises. Just the comfort of having someone in the room who truly understood. "Are you still writing?" she asked. "Actually, I'm teaching now. Creative writing. Mostly to teenagers who are angry and lost and too stubborn to admit they care." She laughed. "That sounds perfect for you." He smiled. "It kind of is." There was no romantic spark that demanded fulfillment. No forced reunion. Just mutual respect, quiet healing, and the kind of connection that doesn't need fixing. It just exists. Later that night, after the gallery emptied, Elena sat alone with her paintings. She looked around the room, remembering every moment that led to this. The betrayal, the silence, the dinner, the aftermath. She had bled on canvas, built from ruin, and found herself again in the process. Outside, the city pulsed. Life continued. Inside, Elena felt stillness. Not the stillness of being stuck, but the kind that comes when you've arrived where you were always meant to be. She stood up, turned off the lights, and walked out the door, shoulders back, heart open, step steady. Because some endings aren't really endings. They're just beginnings in disguise.